Hi, everyone, and welcome. We are very excited to be joined today by AYR Wellness's David Goubert. We're excited to focus in on the cannabis conversation, hitting, of course, important states like Ohio and Florida, and then just sort of focusing in on where AYR is focused right now and their path towards growth. Good reminder for anyone who's out there. One, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you taking the time. And then two, would love to invite you into the conversation. So if you have any questions, comments, anything like that, definitely a good reminder to pop those in the chat. With all that out of the way, David, great to have you on again. Thanks for making the time. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm good, and thanks for having me again, Mackenzie. It's always awesome to spend some time together. So very happy to be here.
Yeah, it's always a fun, informative time, I feel like, when you're on. So it's a good blend. I really appreciate it.
There you go.
Well, so before we jump into AYR, which I know we will soon, how have you been in general? What have you been up to? What's been keeping you busy? I'm guessing a lot of AYR, but what's sort of on a personal side? What have you been up to?
So what's been keeping me very busy is AYR, and recently really wanted to spend time in the different markets. So I think that my last 6 weeks since 420, I think I've been in markets every week in different states. And whether it's to see the dispensaries, whether it's more on the cultivation and overall operation. So that took a lot of my time, and haven't had that much personal going on since we last met. My next interesting trip will be at the end mid-August, right after the earnings. My brother, slightly younger than me, is getting married in Lithuania, which I've never been to Lithuania. So that's going to be the highlight, I think, of the summer, getting to that part of Europe, which I'm absolutely not familiar with.
Very exciting. Fair enough. Well, it sounds like a lot of travel for sure, and that's going to keep continuing on, which is great. It'll be kind of nice to be able to do that on the other side of earnings, because I know earnings is a very busy time,
Yep.
Fun, but then it'll be nice to kind of get that relaxing time in. All right. Well, maybe that's a good spot to start with. So, got through Q1, I feel like pretty strong, which is great to see. Is there anything that you're kind of coming up with on this next quarter that you're excited to kind of build on what you've achieved in Q1? What's sort of the hope there?
Yeah, that's it. For us, it's really at the same time being heads down, working on grinding the business, developing the business, building on the foundation, and at the same time really preparing for the future. And I think that that's pretty much the message that we're passing in Q1 by saying, okay, solid results, up, I think 3% quarter over quarter on revenue, continuing to deliver that 25% EBITDA that we said we would deliver, and also confirming on the free cash flow positive for the year. So those were the key messages in terms of, I'd say, really driving the business and getting that. And on the other side, it's preparing for the future with Ohio, with Florida. I'm sure we'll come back to those states. So it's been that. The other thing that I think is that we're starting to see in Q1, and we'll talk also more probably in Q2, is very much the fact that things start to come together, right? What I was sharing at the end of the Q1 earnings is, for the past year, we've been doing a lot of work behind the scene on, okay, where are the brands from a CPG brands? What are our brands? How do we rationalize? What does that look like? From a retail brand, AYR Cannabis Dispensary, what are our pillars? What does that look like? And I think that 420 and more with 710 and so on are the moments that this is actually becoming front of house and in front of our patients and customers, and probably traveling at 420 in the different states. And especially, I think, in New Jersey, going into the stores there, I was like, wow, okay, that starts to come to life. So a lot of work behind the scene on that, that now we start getting actually the pieces of the puzzle together and start to show up as, okay, that's the future of AYR. So that showed up a bit, I'd say, in Q1. We'll talk more about it also in Q2, but that's very much what I'm looking for the remaining of the year.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. Can you take us a little bit more? I know we'll hit Ohio and Florida. I see some good questions coming in already, which is awesome. But can you take us a little bit more into the brands, kind of what AYR is working on, where the focus is, and kind of what those, how you're teeing that up, like you were mentioning earlier, just more detail.
So the big thing that, if I take a step back for just one quick second and defining the business model that AYR is, we've been insisting on the fact that we're really two things at the same time, and they need to fit each other. That's when I call the flywheel. One is we're a retailer. We need to focus as being a retailer, building that retail brand, which is AYR Cannabis Dispensary, and have clarity on the pillars and what that is. And then on the other side, we have those CPG brands where we're saying, hey, we need to have brands that have a life of themselves, but they need to be big enough. They need to be across categories so that they can really accompany customers and patients throughout their cannabis journey. And we've talked about it. We had, I think, 12 brands, and we're saying, no. We want 2 hero brands, Kind and Haze, and really want them to start going throughout the different form factors and categories. So exactly what we're doing now and what starts to come to life. So if I take the example of Kind, which looks like this, okay, mango color and Kind. We're now in that phase where we have flower. We always had flower in Kind, so we continue on the flower, and we change the packaging and other things. We've now launched the Kind gummies, which is a full new recipe and really working very well in different states. Starting going into pre-rolls, starting going into CDT vapes and other products like that for Kind. At the same time, we're doing the same thing with Haze, that started more as a concentrate brand, right? But moving into also other categories with Haze. We have like vapes coming, like all-in-one vapes coming on Haze. We have pre-rolls with infused pre-roll, live infused pre-rolls that started in Nevada for 410. So I'd say that the work that's happening right now is, now that we have well-defined those brands, who are they, who's the customer, how we talk about those brands, it's really expanding the product range that goes into those 2 brands, and therefore put the I'd say the marketing power behind those 2 brands. So that's where we are. What I would add to that is there's a lot of work behind the scene that's done by the operation teams on getting more agile in launching new products. That was a weakness that we had even in 23, and I think we're turning a bit the corner on that agility in launching new products. So that one is, I think, a key thing that we're in. The other thing I think that needs work, and it's a second half of the year focus, is now that we have that, we need to support our wholesale business through the marketing of those brands, and it's not yet in place. So long answer again, but those are some of the things that, hey, we're feeling good about where we are, and the things that we need to focus for the second half.
I'm going to call that a comprehensive answer, not a long answer. I think that's good. It covers a lot, which is great. In terms of being more nimble and able to be responsive to producing the types of products that people want to see, what would you credit that to? Is that the team that builds in a better process? Is that getting better data from customers in terms of what they want and feedback? What sort of would you credit for that agility or nimbleness?
Yeah. I'll credit it mainly to the efforts in operations, in building the right processes, the right team, and getting that sense of urgency with, at the same time, the right SOPs and so on. So I think that's a big piece. And I mean, as I think, we hired a COO, George, that joined in November, and George has really like taking the bull by the horns on improving tremendously the work we're doing on that front. So I'd say a big part of the answer is that. The second part of the answer is all the work that was done before in defining those 2 brands is helping us on saying, hey, this is important, this is not. And this belongs into this brand or it doesn't, based on the quality we want to have, the customer we're going after. And so when I was talking about Kind and Haze, we're not going to put a live rosin pre-roll into Kind. That's a Haze product. A distillate infused will be in Kind. Same on vapes, same on flower, and so on. So I think that work on brands helped defining what we want to go after. The big change in the past 6 months, it's the operational efficiency.
Yep, fantastic. That's great. Seeing some love for gummies and vapes in the comments, which is awesome, not surprising.
You appreciate it, yeah.
Great to see it. On the vape front, I feel like I've heard a lot around vapes and them sort of being a big growing segment. Are you guys seeing that as well? What's sort of your feedback on the vape side of things?
Yeah, and it's I'd say for us it's different state by state as well in terms of maturity in the market, but also our own maturity. Like if you take the Florida market, for example, we have a huge market share on everything oil, if you want, but and vapes being a big part of that. And we're growing now more of live resin versus distillate on that, but we're above market share, and it's a big market in Florida. To the contrary, in other markets, we're actually quite still in the beginning of getting to the right place. I could talk about Massachusetts, where we're not there. I could talk about New Jersey, where I think we're getting absolutely there, and we'll take I'd say a pretty large market share from a wholesale standpoint on that front. So it's a state by state situation. I think to answer more bigger picture than air, yes, I think what we're seeing is flower is still king, but flower is king, but a king that somehow is going to continue to go down a bit in terms of mix. Vape and in different form of vapes is rather, I'd say, growing-ish. And then other categories like edibles that we put a lot of emphasis on is really something that start to take off and should take off, which, by the way, is also a category that has one of the highest margin. So it's always a good thing to be able to grow in the categories that actually brings a lot to the bottom line.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I think in general that makes sense. I feel like people who are cannabis purists or just very much into cannabis and the plant are more flower based and kind of have been in cannabis for a while now. But I think as we're seeing normalization and sort of just acceptance spread for cannabis, it's not surprising that I think new people coming in might not start at flower. They might start on vape or something more familiar, or even edibles, and kind of work their way in. So not surprising to see those other categories grow. I don't know if that means flower declines or if it's just relative to everything else.
I mean, when I say decline, it's declining in terms of mix, right? It's not declining in terms of volume, but kind of declining in terms of mix across all the categories.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I agree. Well, so you mentioned kind of tailoring to different markets, which makes total sense. Would love to use that as a hard pivot into Ohio to talk about what's coming there. And also kind of get into, is there anything specifically different that Ohioans, if that's the word, are craving versus other markets? And then we'll get into how you guys are going to turn on in Ohio.
Yeah. So Ohio, as you know, we opened with our partners 3 locations in Q4 in November. As medical, this is growing nicely every month, but it's not a huge, tremendous business because those stores in medical are still limited, but we're pretty happy with what we see happening. Obviously, the key focus is how do we get ready for adult use, and we're really in the heart of it. Last Friday was the day that we could actually apply for the +1 license. Our partners could apply for the +1 license with the state, which we did. The team did an amazing job, and I think within 1 hour Friday morning from at 9 a.m. everything was already filed. And on top of that, partners will file the applications with the +1, plus also same for cultivation. So really, we're positioning ourselves to be able to be at 8 dispensaries ASAP when it will be possible. But right now is getting the 3 existing into adult ASAP. We've identified I'd say the locations for the other ones, and it's following that process. Expecting first adult sales. We're not sure if it's going to be at the end of June or it may be during the first half of July. That's still kind of depending on how quickly the regulators can inspect and get that going. And yeah, getting ready for that. On the cultivation side, we continue the ramping of we have 2 facilities, one on cultivation, one is more of a processing and kitchen. We continue the ramping. We feel very good about where we are. Great quality of flower. So it's both a play of retail and a play of wholesale. Some of it will start to show up in Q3. I think Q4 will be obviously even much stronger, but that's clearly something we look forward to very, very anxiously in a positive way.
Yes, that's right. And yeah, what's the word? Excitedly? I guess I don't know. Excitedly.
Exactly. Yeah.
In a way. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. Does it matter at all? I know with seasonality of cannabis to some degree, summer can be a good time for, people want to go out, buy more. Does it matter that the market is kind of opening late summer and sort of nice weather, all that stuff? Does that have any impact? I don't know. Cannabis.
I don't know. I don't know. Well, I think I think there's excitement out there. I mean, Ohio is a pretty big market. I think, what is it, 9 or 10 million people population in the state. Pretty limited medical market today in terms of number of card holders and people. So I think that the boost that we should see should be significant, and I think people are excited for it and aware of it. It's also interesting to see that it's a state that is pretty limited in terms of marketing actions that you can take now, which we expect also some changes there. So I think that we'll be able to be louder about the dispensaries opening as adult. So yeah, it's got as good time in summer as probably in other times, and excited.
I just feel like with the 420, I know it was on a weekend, and that was sort of a big boost. And I think summer, they'd mentioned trends were also positive in summer. So hopefully it's the same thing. So you mentioned awareness. Seems like people are aware, or people who are in Ohio are aware. What are the ways that you guys are able to take currently before those marketing, not channels, but restrictions kind of loosen a bit? Is it word of mouth? Is it?
Yeah, it's mainly, I mean, I'd say the two key things for the moment is very much word of mouth and partnering locally with local organization, local, I mean, the cities themselves, and we're lucky to be in very friendly cities, and so partnering with local community and local businesses and so on in terms of raising awareness is the way we can do that for the moment. So that has worked really well. But at the end of the day, word of mouth is really so far the way to make that happen. And I'd say stores need to be also a beacon, meaning that we need to make sure that from a facade work, presence outside, and so on, you drive by and you're like, wow, what's this? Like, even if you don't know immediately it's a dispensary, at least it needs to catch your eye and be like, oh, I'm intrigued.
Then you might ask your friend and they might know, and that sort of comes from there. Yeah, that totally.
Exactly. Yep.
All right, okay, cool. Anything else on the Ohio side before we turn to, I know people are very curious about what is going on in Florida, what's to come in Florida?
No, I mean, honestly, Ohio, feeling good about the process, feeling good about where we are. We're with our partners really working on these applications and the +1, and should be in a good place.
That's exciting. Sounds like you're lining things up to knock them down, which is great.
Yep.
All right, well then on the Florida side, again, that's still kind of coming through, trying to figure out. I know there's some polling data out there, seems positive, but not over until it's over for sure. What's your thought on the likelihood of Florida recreational passing this year?
Yeah. So definitely it's not over until it's over, right? And it's not done until it's done. And I think that it's the first time as an industry that we're really all coming together and working together towards that goal. And I haven't been for that long in the industry, but I can tell you that all the key players are connected, even by text, almost daily. There's a CEO text group for Florida where we're on that together, specifically on that. So I think it's the first time that you see really that industry getting together. Currently feeling optimistic about the results. The polls that we're seeing are rather positive, high 60s, if you want, pretty much. We know there's going to be also competition in terms of messages that's being put out there right now in Florida by different peoples and entity in Florida. And so we know that we have our work cut out for us, but feeling optimistic about it. So far, polls looks good. And I'd say a good coalition through Smart and Safe of the industry, with already 15 million in the bank to really prepare for that campaign. And all hands on deck, we need to make it happen.
Yep, that totally makes sense. I think that's great to see, like you're talking about the unity, the sort of single push from a bunch of operators in Florida to get something done, which is great. Do you have a group chat name? I know you can name your group chat.
No, there's no group chat. No, there isn't actually, or it would be Smart and Safe, I guess. But we need to come up with something. You're right.
You could do Smart and Safe. I think that's easy. Stays on brand, which is the key thing.
Or yes on 3. That's
Yes
the big
on 3.
thing. Yes on 3.
That is true. That is true. Well, so in terms of efforts and all that, do you think that picks up towards the end? Because I think you're right. There are still going to be some people who are trying to sort of fearmonger a little bit. I think a lot of the times it's on the politician side, which I still don't quite understand, because I think a lot of the things that Yes on 3 is pushing for is safe, regulated cannabis. So it should sort of align with, I think, a lot of what politicians should want for their citizens. Do you see that sort of ramping up in terms of pressure as we get closer to the vote, as we get closer to November? What's sort of the thought in terms of, or is it like a consistent push just sort of over the year or over the few months?
No, I think it's going to look different at the different moment as we get closer to the election. So there's efforts that are happening right now on some part of the population based on what we hear today, and that's going to evolve throughout the summer and then evolve further as we get into fall and closer to the election day. So it takes different forms. So I think we're not at all in the peak right now. There's some work happening right now, but we're not at the peak of that yet. And it's going to gradually get stronger as we go throughout the year. I think one important message to your point earlier is this is not about opening up to cannabis in Florida or not. Meaning cannabis is here. Just our message is really about, to your point, the safety of being in a legal environment with product being tested, not only tested from a potency standpoint, but also tested from bacteriologic standpoint and everything. And to me, that's the key message. If I have friends or people around me that ask me, why should I vote yes on 3? I mean, I tell them, listen, I have 3 kids that are in their 20s. One of them only is consumed from time to time, and I would not want her to go in and buying stuff that hasn't been tested. And to me, it's really truly a safety issue, and it's the regulation is so important because of that.
Yeah.
So that's the key message that we need to pass. And plus, obviously, the impact from a business standpoint and so on that it has in Florida, supporting the economy and everything. But safety first, that's the number one message.
Yeah, totally agree. To me, again, I'm biased, I think, in general, but to me, it seems like a no-brainer. It seems like things are chugging along, which is good. I see Stevie's comment on the positive side, which is great. We'll see. Again, it's good to see. It's good to hope for the best, but it's good that you guys are actually planning and doing the work for the best, which is great. In terms of prepping from a business perspective, how are you guys sort of getting ready? I had seen your deal with AYR. Can you talk a little bit about what that is?
Very, very happy to talk about that. So I'm going to separate that for a sec from the vote on adult use. If you look at Florida today and where we are in Florida today, we have about 10% of the stores in the state. We have about 13 to 14% market share in oil products. We have only 6% market share in flower. And so it's clear that even in the current environment, we don't have enough flower, neither do we have indoor flower to actually properly serve the market. So this investment for us serves us even in the medical market. We need it even in the medical market. That said, obviously, that's even more important as the market turns adult. And we're making a lot of progress in our Gainesville facility in terms of efficiency, productivity, and flower gram and so on that we get out of the facility. But we know that we also need that indoor in the current market, and obviously even more as adults. So it's super important for us to lock that site and to partner, to your point, with IPR on this one. It's a significant investment, $43 million, between the buying the building and the investment for building cultivation. That's going to take us about a year until the end of Q2 25 to be ready and get the first flower in early or in Q3, right at the right time, I think, in Florida. I think it's also one of the largest deals that's been done over the past 2 years in the industry that shows the confidence of IPR in AYR and that we have in the future. So that's really a box that we need to check sooner than later. And I'm super happy and proud of the team to have found a site, really work with a great partner with IPR, and get us in the right place as we prepare for the future of Florida. So that's super exciting.
Yeah, so more of a bet on the industry, a bet on AYR rather than on if it turns rec or not. That totally makes sense.
Totally.
In putting that deal together, I know it's, what, 16 acres, something like that. Were you down there checking it out? I mean, you're already there, kind of, but were you walking around, scoping it out? How does that deal get actually done? How do you vet it fully?
So I actually did go there myself and saw the facility myself maybe 2 months ago. I mean, it's been work from our real estate team to find space. As soon as we found space, really working with our operation team on that. Can that space make sense? What does it look like, and so on. And at the same time, in parallel, our CFO Brad working with IPR on, hey guys, are you ready to follow us on this? And what does that look like? A lot of work on due diligence and so on that has happened over the past 6 months, I'd say, to get there. And yeah, again, very happy that we're able. It's a good site. It's a great building. Should be pretty. It's never easy, but should be pretty straightforward in terms of building up inside the existing building. So it's exciting for us to have that now in the portfolio. Meaning, I used to say that when I look across our markets from a cultivation manufacturing standpoint, I'm going to say cultivation, manufacturing a bit different. I'll come back to that. But from a cultivation standpoint, when I look across the different states, we're in a great place in all the states except we were not in Florida. And I think that checking that box now, I can say that in every market we are, all except Illinois, where we're not vertically integrated for the moment, but we're in a great place in cultivation. That was the last piece of the puzzle for us to add from a cultivation. At the same time, those are smaller investments, but we're making the investments on the kitchen and the processes in all the states to make sure that we have the same SOP, the same process everywhere, but also that we get ourselves in a place where, we have those gummies that with new recipes everywhere, and we have really the right extraction everywhere. So more investments on the manufacturing side and processing side than cultivation outside of Florida. But overall, getting to a really good place, I think, from an operation structure standpoint.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I think last time you were on, we did talk also about sort of the standardization of the processes and all those things coming together. Yep. Super important, and just makes it easier, I think, even for, obviously running in general, but also hiring on new people, having them kind of be able to plug and play as you fit into the process, which makes sense.
And if you want to have a brand like Kind, that is a brand that is consistent across the states, where you really have the same recipes, and you do need to have that consistency in the equipment, in the SOP, and really get to the same place. So that's really a key focus right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. Consistency, making sure everyone has that same experience when they buy it, when they have the brand, they know what they're getting, which totally makes sense, especially in cannabis. Anything else in Florida that you guys are doing to kind of, again, that's not a prepping for recreational coming on, but anything you guys are doing to kind of get your roots in, really dig in as a brand and get people getting to know you guys? I'd seen you guys have done some community events, which were kind of interesting. What things are you kind of?
Yeah. So it happens in Florida and it happens across the board. As we're defining that business model that I was talking about earlier, saying, hey, we're a retailer of choice, and at the same time, we are a house of brands, right? The things that you and I have talked about so far is much more on the side of we're a house of brands and what does it mean for Kind and Haze. At the same time, when we say we're a retailer of choice, we need to anchor that and figure out what are our pillars, who are we as a retailer? How does that show up for the customers, right, or the patients? And so a lot of work that's been done is, let me paddle back, visiting the locations in Florida especially, but in other places. What I realized very much is how much our team and our patients know each other. They come weekly, even more than that. to our locations. They know the bartenders and so on. And I sense a sense of being that neighborhood store that is involved in the community. And I think we're shifting that as being a beacon in the community. So a lot of what we've asked also our teams is partner with local community efforts, charity, and really be part of that community and be active in that community, because that's a big part of being relevant, but also building awareness. The way we decided to do it, especially in Florida, where we have a lot of locations, 64 dispensaries, the way we've done it is to give a lot of ability, power to our teams locally on, you can choose what charity makes sense for your community, because you know what your customers, patients, and so on really are interested in. And that means that instead of saying, hey, we have an agreement nationwide or even statewide, which we did, for example, with veterans in Florida in Q4, but we've decided to give a lot of ability to our team, freedom to partner with local charity that makes sense. So that at the same time excite the teams because they are empowered, right? And it's something local that they can do. So it's very different things from one store to another, or they can decide to group as a city, because there are places where we have 4, 5, 6 stores in the same kind of city area. But as part of the key pillars, Budtender as a hero is one, but beacon of in the community is another one. We really want to get that going. So I'm super happy that the team are taking that at heart and that they are empowered to do that. And same, I'd say, in the other states.
That's fantastic. I feel like from a team perspective, that's great to kind of have that. You get really connected with the company you're working for because you get that freedom and that ability to do what impacts your community the most. From a community aspect, I feel like you really get that authentic connection to your community. It's not just doing something kind of across the nation, which sure is great still, but I think really digging into the community is important, because I think a lot of people are looking for connection nowadays and sort of community. And I think a lot of that time that can be found in things like cannabis, which is great. And I wonder, just from a perspective of people getting to know cannabis and getting to know it from a community improvement sort of perspective as well, I think is important, because it's not just people who are stoners, you know, that whatever, but I think it can be people who are coming together, who are improving the community and making things better. So I think that's really important as well.
Totally.
Fantastic. Have you had any ideas for doing any of them, or are you jumping in to do any of them, or what's one that you've seen that you've liked? I feel like the beach cleaning one is so cool. That's my personal
favorite. So I didn't personally do the one of the beach cleaning, but that's been part of what the team has been doing. There's been some about working with animal rescue center and around pets. That's very cool. Down here in Miami, we've partnered with the Lotus House, which is a house that help women getting back on their feet and into being able to work and so on. So we've been helping that locally. So really, it's been each kind of let's say group of stores or store that say, hey, let's work on this, on that. And as corporate team, if you want, we're trying to get as much as we can and helping and being present. And it's always a great moment, even from a team building standpoint. So really love it.
That's fantastic. Well, so I feel like that's going to continue on through the rest of 2024, I'd hope, and beyond. Anything else you're looking forward to kind of we're almost at a halfway point, I feel like, in the year, that you're looking forward to, that AYR is kind of focusing on? I know we've covered a lot so far, but any sort of final things for the second half of the year?
So I'd say continuing the focus on building the 2 brands, meaning Kind and Haze, and building new products into that, which will come in 7-10 and after that, and continuing that. Supporting wholesale through that in the second half is a big thing. I think that, as you've seen in the earnings maybe, but we're slowly growing our mix of wholesale. We're at 85-15 now. We were at like 88-12 maybe 2 quarters ago. I think we'll see that continue to shift in Q2, in second half, with the development of wholesale. So I'd say continuing to work on the brands, really developing wholesale and wholesale support in some states like Massachusetts, New Jersey, Ohio, our big 3, Pennsylvania, actually, improving on that front as well. So really that focus on wholesale, continuing the work on really defining our brand on the retail side, and who is AYR Cannabis Dispensary, how do we show up, is going to be a big part of the role. And then we'll keep hammering in that out of 91 locations, I think 76 are still adult medical today. So we're so excited about Ohio. We're so excited about Florida. PA, you and I talked about PA before. It's like when? Well, maybe by the end of the year, maybe in the first half of 25. But again, we're optimistic that that's going to turn as well. And that's 9 stores for us turning adult. So it's a mix of focusing on what we control right now, which is everything I talked about in brands, retail, wholesale, and really core business, while at the same time preparing for these key catalysts for us in 80% of our stores, pretty much.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like you guys are set up for a very fantastic year, which is very, very exciting. Also, for anyone who doesn't know and wasn't on, I think it was 2 or 3 times ago that you were on, we had a little bet on who would come first. Was it Ohio or Pennsylvania? I bet Pennsylvania because I wanted it to be Pennsylvania. You bet Ohio, so you were right on that one. But hopefully Pennsylvania will catch up eventually. We'll have to see.
Well, what's your bet? When?
I know. Okay. I got to say, come on. It's got to be this year. It's got to be this year, right? I'm going to say, can I throw out a random month? Timing is such a fool's game, but it's just fun to throw out. I'll say September. I feel like, right? Maybe. That's my bet. September.
Okay. So I'll go with December.
Okay. That sounds good. All right. Check in next time.
In the next one where we're
yeah, who's right? I think you might have a 2 out of 3. We'll have to see, but fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. Well, fantastic. I think, again, AYR, you guys are setting up for a fantastic year. Very, very excited to check in and see how things are shaping up as we go along. But I think this has been fantastic to kind of get some insight into both those important markets and, of course, AYR itself as well. Really appreciate you being on, David. Thank you so much. Everyone, thanks for joining. And we will catch you next time. Thanks so much.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot for having me. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Before investing, carefully consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses found in the prospectus, available at advisorshares.com.